Spring is in the air. Best time to start your food garden. Now I know you know we're in the tropics, you can see from the vegetation, and you're wondering why we're talking about spring? Well, we follow the seasons here also because while we may not really depend on the temperature warming up, it's warm all the time, we do depend on when the rains come. Now we expect the spring rain sometime towards the end of March, early April. So now is the best time to start planning and planting those lovely vegetables that you want to eat fresh from the garden. Now we started our spring planting season about 4 weeks ago, actually first week in February. That's because we have a good supply of water and it's not a problem keeping them going while we are in the traditional dry season. In this video, I'm going to share what you need to do now if you are to take advantage of the best growing season for most of the vegetables. So please keep watching. Thanks for staying. It looks like we're going to be getting a shower of rain soon. Maybe it's the start of the spring rains. So let me cover 4 topics, starting with tips on how you can stay safe in the garden, then the planning phase, deciding what you want to grow, where you want to grow it, depending on your available spaces, the laying out of those of your beds or your containers, very important, the preparation of the planting beds, and then finally the planting. Now, for that purpose, I'm going to be slipping into gardening gear and get right back to you. And I think I'll just start by pointing out to you that I take protection from the elements, protection from the number of things that can do you harm in the garden, foremost of which is the sunlight. I've been gardening for decades, and right at the outset, I determined that I was going to keep my skin healthy for my entire life, hopefully a long life. So from the very beginning, I would never be out in the sun. Those of you who see a lot of our videos, you will see me with my hat, my gloves, and my long sleeve. It may not be sexy, but for the long term, it is the most healthy thing you can do for your skin and other organs. You will sometimes see in the back of the videos, my water jug. I constantly hydrate. If my throat is feeling dry, I will take a sip. So I'm never without these protective elements, and I would recommend, especially for young gardeners just starting off, start off right, because when you get to my age, you really want your skin to be the healthiest thing that people see when they look at you. Now that I've covered the important topic of protective gear, the next topic is why you should start planting now and what you should do to get started. Definitely, you should begin to put your vegetable gardening plans in place by the latest end of March. You don't want to miss too much of the traditional rainy period, that is between April and May. The relatively cool temperatures and rainfall during this period almost guarantees you a good crop. So get started. And the first thing you'd want to do, of course, is to decide what you want to grow. And that depends on your preferences as well as your available space. Now, most crops need as much sunlight as possible, at least 6 hours of sunlight a day. You also need fertile soil, and the site also has to be accessible. If you're limited in space, of course, container gardening is the way to go. Now, after you've decided where you're going to plant and what you want to grow based on what your preferences are, you need to find out where you will get your planting materials. And the planting material would be seeds for those crops that are best sown directly into the soil, such as carrots, melons, beans, and cucumbers, and seedlings for those crops that are best planted from seedlings, such as lettuce, sweet peppers, cabbage, okra, tomato, broccoli, among others. Lay out your beds or your pots in such a way that as much sunlight as possible comes in contact with the leaves, And you know what that means? Lots more photosynthesis and lots more growth and food production. If your site is sloping, then you want to minimize erosion. So orient your rows in the opposite direction to the slope. In other words, at right angles to the slope. Another important consideration is airflow and ventilation. Do not plant your taller plants in such a position that will block the airflow or the sunlight also from reaching the other plants. If you have a relatively light soil and you've been cultivating the area repeatedly over a number of years, as we do, we recommend disturbing the soil as little as possible during the land preparation. What we do is allow a rest period between each crop of about 3 to 4 weeks at least. We apply manures and compost to the surface of the soil during the resting period. We rake it in periodically and either water or when the rain falls, the soil is kept moist so that there is optimum microorganism activity during the rest period. And when we are ready to plant, we just make a relatively small planting hole and put in the next crop and demonstrate that shortly. Now, if it's a new site, you'll have to go through a few more steps in land prep to make sure that you have a well aerated soil, and we've covered that in the Beginner Backyard series. Now that you have decided what you want to plant where, you've laid out your beds, you've prepared your soil, you've sourced your planting materials, now comes the fun part, planting. And I'll demonstrate that using a few of the smaller beds we have here. I decided to plant pak choy and okra in this small bed. The pak choy will be ready for reaping in about 5 weeks, which will leave enough room for the okras to expand and get to their normal size. Leave at least 18 inches between the planting holes. Now let's start with the okra seedlings. If they are rather tall, like these, insert them a little deeper in the hole and firm them in place. Now for the pak choy seedlings. Stagger the pak choy planting holes in the middle of the spaces between the okra seedlings. Planting 2 crops like these that have different days to maturity allows you to reap 2 items from the same space. Someone made the mistake of planting too many pak choy seeds in this small container. It wasn't me, trust me. But all is not lost. I'm just going to take out a few of the seedlings and essentially plant them bare root. Which means I have to tease them apart slowly, place them carefully into the planting holes, and make sure that we maintain high moisture level after planting. They'll survive. I've done it before. So now that we have dropped them out, and these are tiny seedlings, they certainly do not need such a big hole. And the pak choy stem tends to be a little long, so I'm holding it by the leaf, suspending it somewhat. And the final step, watering. A thorough watering at this stage will assist the seedlings, the recently transplanted seedlings, to remain turgid and not wilt. I covered most of the essential things that you should be doing now in order not to miss out on the spring planting season and the early summer growth. Now, to encourage you further, if you need any more encouragement, I'm going to show you what you can look forward to within a few weeks of planting. The joys of growing your own food in your backyard. And the best part, of course, is reaping. Oh, if you have not yet started your own crops for this spring planting season, you realize that you only have another week or two to get those crops in the ground to take advantage of the best growing season. We've come to the end of this video. If you need more information, detailed information on how to grow individual crops, we've done over 15 videos on the more popular vegetables that give you step-by-step demos, how to plant, how to care for them, and all the way through to harvest. So we will encourage you to take a look at some of those videos. Now, if you like the content of this video, and we hope you do, you give us a thumbs up, please, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed as yet, we're asking you to do so. So until the next video, I am Thelma in the food garden saying take care. Bye-bye.